Welcome back, everyone, to the Marketing Essentials podcast series. I'm your host, Costa Taranafilou. Today, we have the one, the only, Jenn Vande Zande, Editor-in-Chief for the future of customer experience and engagement for SAP Customer Experience. Jenn, how are you doing today?
Great. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. It's an absolute honor for us to have you on the show today.
Well, I'm happy to be here. It's always nice to see faces.
Thank you very much, Jenn. 2020, what can we say? It's been a crazy year from the trends and the changes and the catastrophic impact that a number of things have had on the world. One of the interesting changes that we've seen, though, is a downward trend in growth for some big brands. The reality is the way that brands and consumers do business has drastically changed today. Consumers are far more in control than they ever were in the past. What's really happening here with respect to all of this change in big industry? And is this a trend that you see continuing to happen?
It is a trend that I see continuing to happen. And I have a few theories around it even before 2020 hit. So we have Generation X, who is raising Generation Z and millennials. And we know that those generations, they don't follow the status quo. They want to verify their information. They don't believe something that's just printed or put in front of them. So as they start entering the workforce and then becoming business leaders, making those business decisions, they're still going to make business decisions the way that they make decisions in their lives personally when it comes to buying something. So usually that first step now is Google, right? They're smart and savvy enough, they don't click on the ads. And then secondly, the more research is showing they also don't click on branded URLs, right? So when they're looking for those 3 to 5 pieces of information before they'll ever reach out to someone, they want that information to be unbiased, to be authoritative, and be able to give them the answers that they're looking for. So I think that that's a big challenge, especially now when we're in a completely digital field. The playing field has been leveled for smaller players, right? So I think brands are beginning to adapt and understand the importance of having, their brand identity might be changing a little. They might be recognizing that they need to bring in smaller pieces and they don't have to own every single part of it, but they need partnerships and other people to help them be successful.
So some very interesting points that you mentioned there. And one of the key themes that I picked up on there was customer freedom, customer choice, and some examples that you gave of things that also resonate with me. You talked about SEO searches and clicking on ads. I myself might run a search on Google. I'm never going to click on that SEM ad because I know the repercussions of what's going to happen afterwards. Why is it that consumers sometimes feel almost afraid to engage with brands and the type of assets that they're pushing out?
Well, because first they just don't want any more emails. Mm-hmm. So, they realize that if you click on a brand or an ad, a lot of times they're going to ask permission to get your information, and then Lord knows where that information is. So, I personally spend a lot of time trying to figure out, what do they do with our data once they have it? But even someone working in this industry, it's really hard to find the answer. So I think people are just becoming far more protective of their data, or, creative in the ways that they get around it. They make a dummy email where all of those emails go, or, give a fake phone number. So I don't see that changing. I think that will continue to increase. And so even though in a land where we're all living digital really still has to adapt to what's going on today.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's a new way and age. The way that consumers can just interact from a digital perspective is a lot easier today than it used to be. And obviously, when we remove those physical aspects that we don't have as much today, digital becomes an even more important engagement channel, which leads me to kind of the final question where I wanted to wrap up with you on this conversation was, what do brands need to do to get this right? Things have changed. They are not necessarily going to go back to normal, which is what you mentioned earlier. Brands need to make sure that they're changing and addressing those customer needs. What do they need to do?
Well, a lot of brands do a really good job about saying that they listen to the customer, but I think we're going to have to see some real action from the brands themselves. So they're going to have to rethink how they market and what a successful go-to-market looks like, especially, if this continues, which, it's looking like at least through Q2 of next year. They've got to figure out something besides emails and webinars, because now you're competing for this digital time. And we've seen all these studies where the workday is actually incredibly longer now. And there isn't any breaks. So you really need to think of ways to engage with content that will stand out, that maybe might not look like you always look. Because another thing about these generations are that they're kind of always rooting for the underdog. So you need to start thinking in those terms and recognizing that the power of a big brand would actually be to, step forward and say, hey, we've completely rethought this from the customer aspect all the way through then, realizing that the sale never ends, right? So this is a person, it's not just a customer, it's not a target, it's somebody that we want in our ecosystem for a very long time, and start doing business that way.
Mm-hmm. And keep them going, obviously. We're talking about acquisition versus retention. We want to keep customers retained because of the cost difference and the revenue profits that brands might be able to reap. One more short question. There's been a lot of great content. There's been a lot of bad content this year. Can you give me any examples of some killer content or engagement that you've received ever since this changed 2020 world?
Yes. So I have two really favorite brands. One is Who Gives a Crap toilet paper. So they are actually highly sustainable. Right. They're a subscription-based, highly sustainable. So they do toilet paper products, basically. So toilet paper, tissues, and paper towel. You can get a subscription and it's delivered regularly. They never missed a delivery date, even with everything going on in 2020. And it was really their content that caught me at first, right? So it was edgy and it was funny and it made me want to engage with that brand. And then another is Hydrant. They are a company that kind of, not Gatorade because they're not big into sugar, but electrolyte balance that you can add to your water, and just kind of help with energy and getting some of those electrolytes. And also their messaging initially, it was just probably a lot of technology that I really don't want to think about. But when I'm saying to my friends or talking and saying like, oh my gosh, I'm just feel exhausted all the time, or I'm having to schedule breaks so that I get up or else I forget. And they had some really great quirky marketing that felt very personalized, and I love the way that operates as well. And it's also a D2C brand. So
fantastic. I mean, some people are really getting imaginative out there with the way they're actually pushing these ads. I love these State Farm ads. If you want me to be honest, I see them all the time, and I feel like Jake is my best friend from watching him so often on the news. I also kind of get the feeling from what you're saying here that customers are diverse. And there's a lot of different needs and expectations that they're going to have across the buying journey, which also gives us a perfect segue for our next chat on diversity, which we are eagerly looking forward to hosting you again on, Jenn.
Great. Me too. Thank you.
Again, thank you very much for your time. Again, everyone, Jenn Vande Zande, Editor-in-Chief for SAP Customer Experience's Future of Customer Engagement and Experience. Thank you very much for joining us, Jenn.
Thank you.